Hi guys, Matthew from Rory Pilgrim here. I don't know one of the last videos I've ever done in this garage, but I thought today I'd do something which has the religious connection up front, because it is rather interesting in my opinion, and that is poor positions and how they're not exactly as poor as you might think. The classic examples in the Bible are slavery, because, well, the quote that nearly every atheist will bring up is in Exodus. I don't remember the exact quote, I'll certainly bring it up on the screen. But it says something along the lines of, if you beat your slave until death, you shall be put to death, or you shall be fined, at least. But if you beat him unless he's not dead, and then he survives for a couple of days, you will not be fined. What does that mean? Well, most people think it means you're allowed to beat your slave until pretty much they are unable to work, but as long as they survive, you're fine. However, I've always held the position that that's not exactly permission for the slave owner to beat their slave, because if that was the case, what is the point of putting a clause that says you'll be fined if you beat your slave to death? That is a weak position. And an atheist might think we have a weak position defending that. However, there are plenty of examples of weak positions, or seemingly weak ones at least, actually having a good purpose. My example would be several guards in longsword. Classic one that we can think of is Ulber, or Fool's Guard. It's a low guard, only guarding a low area. There are others, such as Chamber, and even one which I think of the Rudder Guard, which is way back here. I'm literally welcoming an attack coming my way. But that's sort of the point. It's an open guard, so I can respond. If someone cuts straight down at me, and I'm in this position, I can deflect. And now I'm chambered, ready, in Von Tag, to launch a counter. Or, if I want to be fluent, I can simply counter, and then go around and strike an overhead. If I want to be a bit more fluid about it, I can do this. Not that easy, but it's doable. Same with the standard Fool's Guard. You start low, someone comes in, you deflect and come in. Easy enough. Another one is Rap Guard, or Zornhut. This is what many people might think of the baseball position, which makes sense, as you're normally slightly squared off. And most people might think this is an easy one to launch an attack from, and only an attack from. This is what is known as a ward, however. Since all these guards are known as wards in longsword tradition, you're wound up, you're ready to launch an attack. But you can still come over, like so. Robinson Swords has a very good video on that. I'll see if I can find a link to it, or at least show a short clip of it over the top of this, which I'm pretty sure I might do right now. You still launch attacks from the Fool's Guard position. Someone comes in thinking you're okay, that you're not going to do much. Easy to rise into long point. It's easy to defend from those positions, despite what people might think. And the same is true of the slavery argument. Because you have to consider who you're talking to, who the passage is talking to. We are seeing it as outsiders. We're not seeing it as the person who's receiving it. If you look at it that way, you see an awful lot. We just see it as someone basically giving others permission to beat slaves, which is not the case at all. If you think about it from the position of a slave owner who beats his slaves as a matter of course, because they're doing poor work and they need to hurry up, you can easily see how telling someone not to beat their slaves would, well, make them question the rules entirely. and therefore they'll reject it outright. However, you've got to remember, the passage goes on to say that the slave is their property, or in other translations, responsibility. You're the owner of the slave, you must look after them. It may not seem like it, but if anything, it's saying that you must be more responsible with how you treat your slaves.
The majority of them do say that the slave is his property or his money, which therefore implies that the slave costs money to own and, for that matter, look after, thus them being responsibility. If you don't look after your slaves, they will not be able to work at all. And indeed, if you look at the translation, the word kasef means silver, which does indeed link to how much the slave will cost to feed or raise. So any damage to a slave to a point where it can't work anymore, and you're costing yourself money. Other personal injury claims back this up. If you look at chapter 21, verse 18, and 19 for that matter, you'll see that if the person dies or gets struck in a way that they can't work, they will be held liable. But the guilty party must be held responsible and must pay the injured person for any loss of time and see that they are completely healed. This immediately follows on to verse 20 and 21, which is the decisive passages, and therefore are duly linked. And in fact, later on, you see an owner who, in chapter 26, an owner who hits a male or female slave in the eye and destroys it must let the slave go free to compensate. And same with the tooth. That shows that slave beating is not looked well upon in ancient Israel, no matter what people might think. And thus they are being shouted at and told not to do it, and therefore punished, or even letting the slave go.
Questionable? Certainly sounds like it. But you look at it that way, and the slave has any sentiment towards the master, or the other way around, sorry, then you're seeing the slave as an asset. If you beat your slave too much to the point they can't work, then that asset is no longer getting you money. It's no longer doing the job. You've literally beat them to the point that they can't work anymore. They may as well be dead to you. So why not just continue beating them until they are dead? That's why the fine came in. That's why the laws say you must not beat your slave until they are dead, because then you get fined. So regardless, if you beat your slaves, you're going to lose out. Beat them to death, you're going to get fined. Beat them until they can't work, but they survive, you have to make sure they can get back to health, and good enough health that they can work again, all the better. It's the difference between a bucket that you can repair and a bucket you're going to smash. You know, an old boss who would see a crack in a bucket that I felt could easily be fixed with a bit of duct tape, and he would jump on it. Literally, he would jump on it. He damn near broke his back at one point. If you constantly think, it is useless, I'm going to destroy it, you're going to have to pay for something else. If, however, as this is the case, you give someone a reason to keep the slave in good health, because the alternative is either you're going to have to pay repairs or pay for their health to come back, or that you have to pay a fine anyway. that is more questionable. The only other example I can think of is in the case of, say, I'm trying to think of one that's not derogatory, but there's going to be people are naturally going to launch into an attack with me, regardless of what I'm going to do. So I may as well give you a classic example, which is going to have to be if you lend someone something like, say, a computer. You lend them your laptop. If they get frustrated with it and smash up the laptop, if it still works afterwards, then you might be able to get away with it. But if it's to the point where it's broken and needs time to repair, then that person is not going to be happy with you. They're going to charge you for repairing their laptop. So what are you going to do? Smash it up and grind it into pieces and send it away to the dump? They'll know about it. If they give you something back which is already broken, they're going to be furious. But it's that sort of thing. It may sound derogatory that I'm narrowing down the slave thing, but this is important. That's unfortunately how they would have seen slaves, regardless of which culture they are. Learn the difference. And learn to recognise that if you're going to destroy something, you're going to need to buy something else, which might be even cheaper. But if you destroy something and think, I'm going to get away with it, no, you're going to get fined. It's like the insurance thing. You can buy something, insure it, and use it until it breaks down to the point where you need to get repaired. Some people might think, oh, I know, I'll just crash it so it's no longer usable, and then get the insurance. No, that's not going to work. They'll smell a rat and they will check it out. And they will fine you to high heaven and back. It may be just as expensive to repair it, but ultimately it just means you need to treat it better. You need to make sure you maintain it, you don't beat it up, you don't do anything that will harm it to the point where it can't work. Apply that to the slaves. Apply that to that passage, and you will see that Exodus is speaking about that in clear terms. If you beat your slave until they die, you will be fined. So you shouldn't beat them at all, because it is your responsibility to make sure they can survive. It's a bit more rambling and less waving around a weapon, I'm afraid, but that's the long and the short of it. Beat your slave, sooner or later you're gonna have to pay a fine. Either they will be less productive and so you will lose money, or they will die and you'll have to pay the fine. It may seem like a stupidly weak position, but when you consider it from all the angles, you'll be amazed what you can learn from it. Stay safe, everyone. Don't know how many videos I do here now, but I'll do what I can. Until next time, God be with you.